Hi, my name is Ken.
And my name is Jason.
And today we're looking at
Elder Sign.
So today on Season 3 of Two Guys and Some Drywall, as you can see, we've actually changed our set again. I actually got rid of the old couch that we used to use for sitting upon for oh so long, because it was an uncomfortable piece of trash. And yeah, we decided to go with something a little bit more, early morning talk show, variety.
And less evil.
Less evil. We are trying really hard to reduce the amount of evil that we have on the show.
It's our New Year's resolution, in fact.
Indeed it is. We have actually both resolved to be less evil.
Which is ironic, considering the game that we are playing today.
Well, because we are now as good as possibly we can be, which is still not very good. We have banded together to fight against the great old one. The ancient one from Elder Sign. So, what do we want to say about Elder Sign today?
So, Elder Sign was originally designed by Richard Launius and Kevin Wilson, and it was published in 2011 by Fantasy Flight Games.
Interestingly enough, we should note that Richard Launius is in fact the man who originally designed Arkham Horror back in the 1980s. So it's cool that he's actually still in the game.
Yep. In Elder Sign, players take the role of characters who are investigating strange occurrences that are going on in the museum at Miskatonic University.
Players are actually working together to fight against the ancient one that is coming through, threatening to destroy our world. Just like in every other Arkham Horror, or Arkham alumni base game.
Yep, and Elder Sign is actually set in the same universe as Arkham Horror, and in fact, all of the investigators in Elder Sign are the same investigators from the original set of Arkham Horror, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, which is something they've been keeping up pretty damn consistently throughout all of their Arkham universe. It's nice because you get to see some familiar faces.
Yep.
Without any further ado, let's check out some of the familiar faces in Elder Sign.
So first, let's go over the components of Elder Sign. This is the clock. This is the museum entrance. These are the Ancient One cards, the Adventure cards, and the Otherworld cards. These are the Investigator cards, the Mythos cards, Allies, Spells, Unique items, and Common items. These are the Investigator markers. These are the Doom tokens. These are the Elder Signs, Clue tokens, Sanity tokens, Stamina tokens, and Monster markers. And these are the dice.
So, to set up Elder Sign, place the clock and the entrance sheet on the table approximately here, and make sure the clock is set to midnight. Keep the dice nearby, you're going to be needing these a lot. Next, select a great old one at random from the deck of cards. So, Jason, I'll get you to pull one of them out there.
Let's see... Oh, look at that, Cthulhu.
What a bloody surprise. Well, that's the great old one we're going to be using. Add the monsters to a cup of some sort. Honestly, we just use the box lid. You can use whatever you like. However, make sure to remove the masked creatures. These are the ones with the little masquerade mask icon on the back of them. Obviously, you're only removing the masked creatures if your great old one is not Nyarlathotep. If it is Nyarlathotep, you have to leave them in. You're not going to want to, but you are going to have to. Next, take the adventure cards, those are the ones with the little maze icon on the back, and shuffle them all up together. Then deal 6 face up, right over here. Place the rest face down in a pile. You're going to be using those a lot too. Take the Otherworld cards, so there's one with a little green portal on the back, shuffle them up right nice, and place them by the great old one. Something I forgot to mention when I was putting down the adventure cards, if there is a locked die icon on one of the cards, you will have to then place the die on it then. I hope you do not have to worry about that on your first set of cards, though. Separate all the Investigator cards and place them somewhere close by. Remember, of course, to give these bad boys a little shuffle beforehand. Separate out the Elder Signs, the Clue tokens, the Sanity, and Health markers, and make sure they're all accessible to everyone. Shuffle up the Investigator cards and hand one randomly out to each player. Jason has got Bob Jenkins, the salesman, and I get Gloria Goldberg, the author. Take their Investigator icons, and place them at the front entrance. Make sure to give all the players their starting icons. So, Gloria is going to get 6 sanity, 4 health. She's also going to get 1 random common item and 1 random spell. Bob Jenkins is getting 4 sanity and 6 stamina. He's also going to get 2 common items and 1 unique item. Next, shuffle up the Mythos cards, place them near the clock. If you haven't already determined the first player, you're going to want to do that now. So, Dungeon Quest, Jason?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Just a sec. Okay.
Ha, hiya, tsh, hua, ha, hiya, tsh, hua, ha, hiya, blah, blah. Once you determine the starting player, hand them the dice. The best way to make sure that everyone understands who the current player is to pass the dice around, because the current player is usually going to be the only one that ever needs them. So, once you determine the starting player, they draw their first Mythos card and resolve any immediate effects immediately. Luckily, this one is there is no immediate effect today. However, lock 1 green die. Dun dun dun. And now you are ready to play.
So, during a player's turn in Elder Sign, they go through the following phases in order. First of all, the movement phase. So they can move their investigator marker to any face-up adventure or other world, or back to the entrance. Second is the resolution phase, and in this phase they may take an action based on their current location. Finally, there is the clock phase, where the clock hand is advanced by 3 hours. Alright, so I'm going to go check out the security office.
Okay.
So you hang around here and just wait for about 3 hours. Just don't do anything.
Yeah, okay, sure. Yeah.
Alright.
Hilarious. Twitter's amazing.
There you are. What have you been doing?
Oh, I was just checking up on Twitter.
But the ancient one, like what?
You told me to wait here, so I just assumed that
you had
this, you know?
Just go in.
Okay,
you go do something.
Sure, fine, okay. Check the security office myself.
Let's see what's new on Twitter. So at this point, let's go over the investigator cards. So each person is going to have one of these. They show a picture of the person, their name. On either side are the sanity and the stamina values for that investigator. So this is how much they start with. And it should be noted that you can't actually go over these values typically. So whenever anything says regain a stamina, if you're already at your maximum, then you actually don't gain that stamina. Each investigator also has a list of starting items. So these are the things that they start the game with. And these can be cards from the investigator decks or clue tokens or various other things. In addition, each investigator will have a special ability just down in the lower left corner of their card. Each one of these is unique, so there's lots of different ones. We won't go over all of them. One thing to note, though, is there are some that say once per day. Each once per day ability can only be used once during the entire rotation of the clock hand. So once it's used, it's a good idea to place something on them to remind you. I usually use an Elder Sign or something like that. And that is removed when the clock strikes midnight next and is recharged. So for the movement phase, it's pretty simple. Like I said, you basically can take your investigator marker and you can move it to any face-up adventure card, any other world cards that happen to come out, or back to the entrance. You can move to any location regardless of how many other players are already there, and you can actually choose not to move and just stay where you are. So during the resolution phase, if an investigator is at an adventure or another world, then they must attempt to complete the tasks on that card. So let's take a quick look at an adventure card. And other world cards look essentially the same as this anyway. So at the top, you're going to see a picture depicting whatever it is the adventure is about. This number here shows how many trophies this card is worth. More on that later. There's a title for the adventure. There is some flavor text describing what the adventure might be about. Sometimes there are effects that say either terror or at midnight, and more on those in a second. There is usually a list of tasks down here. And there are penalties and rewards. Just to note a few things that may show up on the card, just so you know what they look like. When you see sort of this white shaded area, that is a monster task, and I'll explain about those in a little bit. Some cards will have an order arrow, which is this arrow at the top left of the task list. And that just means that the tasks have to be completed in order, and I'll go over that in a second as well. Some adventures or other worlds will also have this dice lock icon, which we've already seen for the Mythos deck, but as soon as one of these comes up, you actually have to place the appropriately colored die there immediately, and that die cannot be used until this card is removed somehow, and more on that in a little bit. So the player always starts with all 6 green die when they start an adventure, unless one is locked, which is actually the case at the start of our game here. The yellow and red dice can actually be added by special abilities or items, more on that later. The player starts quite simply by rolling his dice pool. After the dice have been rolled, abilities or items can be used to alter the dice in some cases. After that, dice can be allocated to tasks. So each line in the task list is an individual task. For example, this one shows 6 investigation, so you have to put a total of 6 investigation there to complete that task. And with the investigation icons, you can actually combine multiple dice to finish that task, if need be. If the roll was successful, in other words, if you actually completed at least one task with it, then you may roll the remaining dice in your pool again. If the roll was unsuccessful, then the player may choose to take one of the dice and place it on their investigator marker, which is called focusing the die, and this allows you to keep that result. After he chooses to focus or not, he must discard one die from the pool, at which point, if he has any dice remaining, he can roll again. If, however, the player has no dice left that he can roll, then he has failed the adventure. And it should be noted that a player can choose to fail the adventure at any point. You may be asking, why would you want to do this? Well, sometimes you simply don't have enough dice remaining to complete the remaining tasks. So in that case, rather than actually rolling everything out until you run out of dice, you can simply just say, okay, I can't do this anymore, and just do the fail. So in the event that the player completes all of the tasks shown, then they have succeeded at that adventure. So they first move the card to their play area and remove all of the dice from it. If the card was an adventure and not another world, then you actually draw a new adventure from the deck to replace this one. And finally, all rewards that are listed in the rewards section at the bottom of the card are gained. So in this case, it would be 1 clue token and a unique item. If, however, a player fails the adventure, then they do not get the card, obviously, and they must face all of the penalties shown in the penalties section here. So in this case, they would lose 1 sanity and 1 stamina. So getting back to focusing, as mentioned, after you fail the roll, you can actually focus 1 die, which means that it is placed on your investigator marker, and that die is essentially secured until you choose to use it, or until the end of your turn. A player can only focus once per turn, not once per roll, once for your entire turn, so keep that in mind. And a focus die is removed at the end of the turn regardless, so it goes back to the die pool. Now, after a failed result, however, if another investigator happens to be at the same location, then you can actually request assistance from that investigator. Assistance can only be requested once per roll, although you can request it multiple times if there are multiple people there during your turn. This works exactly like focusing, so you would place the die that you wish to secure on that investigator's marker. However, requesting assistance does come with a risk. If the adventure eventually fails, then anyone that had assisted that player actually must lose 1 sanity or 1 stamina, their choice. It should be noted also that if there is a terror effect on an adventure or other world that you are currently attempting, then if you fail a roll and there are any terror icons showing on any of your dice, then you must immediately resolve the terror effect. So now back to the locked dice, and we already had one as mentioned previously. So when a die is locked, it may not be used until the locking card is resolved. So in the case of the Mythos card, which is what's happened here, as soon as the next Mythos card is drawn and replaces that one, that die goes back into the pool. Likewise, if an adventure or another world has locked the die, then the die is unlocked as soon as that adventure or other world is completed. If a die is locked by multiple cards, and this is generally in the case of the yellow and red dice, then it may not be used until all relevant locks are resolved. So you would simply move it from whatever lock it's on currently to the next one. Character special abilities may not be used to roll locked dice unless it specifically says that it can. And there is actually one character that can temporarily unlock dice in this way. So first of all, clue tokens. They're not technically items, but they kind of fall into the same category as to what they do, so we'll go over them here. So clue tokens can be spent after the dice are rolled, and they can be used to re-roll any number of the dice that were rolled. And the player may keep re-rolling so long as he has clue tokens to spend. As far as actual items go, whenever an item is actually used, it is returned face down to the bottom of its deck. Many items, such as this whiskey here, simply have text on them. So when they're used, you simply follow the instructions. In this case, discard this card instead of losing 1 sanity. Some items will allow the player to add the yellow and or red dice to the die pool. These may be played at any time before the player rolls, and once a die is added, it actually remains in the die pool until it is used or discarded. So once you've added the yellow die, you keep rolling it and keep adding it to the subsequent dice pools until it is actually on a task or you have discarded it because you failed to roll. After the adventure is resolved, however, special dice are returned to the supply unless they are secured by a spell. It should also be noted that once a special die is added, it cannot be re-added after the player discards or uses it. Allies actually convey special abilities to the player, and they actually stay in play until a specific condition is met. And now on to spells. Now, many spells allow a player to secure 1 or more dice, and they will show this icon here to denote that. When used, the player may take any dice that they have just rolled and place them on any of the icons on the spell to secure the die. Once a die is secured on a spell, it remains there until it is used or removed. So it is actually not removed at the end of the player's turn, and subsequent players may use it from the spell. In addition, any player may, during their turn, remove the die to actually roll it, instead of using whatever face is actually face up. After the last die is removed from a spell, it is discarded. Alright, now that we've gone over the basics of Adventures in Other Worlds, let's go over the entrance, because there are a few things that you can actually do over here if you have chosen to move there. So first of all, as mentioned, all of the adventures have a number of trophies associated with them. Monsters do too, but we'll mention monsters in a little bit. So, while at the entrance, you can do one of the following things. First of all, you can choose to receive first aid. So, you can choose to gain either 1 sanity or 1 stamina for free. You can choose to pay 2 trophies to fully regain either sanity or stamina, or you can pay 4 trophies to regain both fully. It should be noted, when you are spending trophies, you simply discard whatever it is that's giving you the trophies. So if you have a 2 trophy card, then you simply discard it to the relevant discard pile, and there is no change. So if you discard a 2 but you're only spending 1, well, you just lose the extra 1. Another thing you can do at the entrance is search the lost and found. To do that, you simply roll a green die, and you look at the chart on the entrance card to see what you've gotten. So you can actually gain a clue token, a common item, or a spell, but you can also lose sanity or stamina, so that may not be such a good idea if you have something better to do. And lastly, you can choose to buy a souvenir. So these cost various numbers of trophies, and they allow you to buy pretty much any of the investigator items, and you can actually buy an Elder Sign for 10 trophies. So this is a good way to get yourself back ahead if you've got a lot of trophies kicking around and you need more Elder Signs quickly. Now next up is being devoured. So if a player ever entirely runs out of their stamina or sanity, then they are devoured. He immediately removes the investigator from the game and returns all of the cards or trophies that he has to the supply. He then draws a new character, takes their starting items, sanity and stamina, and plays them from now on. It should be noted that when the investigator is removed from the game, they are completely removed. They cannot come back subsequently if someone is devoured. And if you ever actually run out of investigators and someone is devoured, then they are simply eliminated from the game. Finally, if a player is devoured during his own turn, he moves to the clock phase immediately. And speaking of the clock phase, let's go over that now. So at the start of the clock phase, the player simply advances the clock by 3 hours. Now, if this does not make it reach midnight, that's simply the end of their turn. If, however, the clock does strike midnight, then there are a couple of other things that they have to do. So first of all, you should check all of the adventures and other worlds that are out to see if there is an at midnight effect. All of those effects occur now. Next, you would draw a new Mythos card, replacing the last one. You resolve its immediate effect immediately. And you note its lingering effect because this is something that's going to be plaguing you for the remainder of the next turn. Finally, you replenish once per day abilities. So now let's talk about Ancient Ones. So first of all, this number at the center of the card, that shows how many Elder Signs you as a group have to gather to defeat this Ancient One and stop them from getting back into the world. So in the case of Great Cthulhu here, that is 13. To the right of that is the Doom track. So various Mythos cards and some other effects are going to add Doom tokens to the Doom track. These are added top to bottom, left to right. And you will note that some of these Doom track icons have this picture on them. This is the monster icon. So whenever you place a Doom token on one of these icons, then you actually do have to draw a monster immediately and place it, and more on that in a second. When the last Doom token is added, that means that the Ancient One has actually awakened, and you have to begin the final battle immediately. In the event that the last Doom token is added at the same time that you get the last Elder Sign that's required to defeat the old one, you actually win the game anyway. So in that case, the investigators win the tie. So in the event that the Ancient One awakens, well, then you actually have to pay attention to the rest of the card. Each Ancient One also has a special effect that is shown here that occurs for the duration of the game. So in the case of Cthulhu, you reduce each investigator's maximum sanity and stamina by 1. So in the event that the Ancient One awakens, then you actually have to pay attention to these icons and this thing here. So if the Ancient One awakens, first of all, you discard the current Mythos card. So if there's a die that's locked, well, that's kind of good news, I suppose. You can actually roll that. You then remove all adventures and other worlds from the game. So again, if there are any dice locked by these, those dice go back into the dice pool. Next, all investigator markers are moved to the Ancient One's card. If the Doom track doesn't happen to be full for some reason, then you fill it up with Doom tokens now. If the Ancient One should happen to awaken during a player's turn, then they immediately move to their clock phase. If midnight happens to strike at the same time that the Ancient One awakes, then the Ancient One attacks immediately. So while you are battling the Ancient One, the turn phase alters a bit. There are now two phases, the attack phase and the clock phase. During the attack phase, the player rolls dice to complete the battle task as many times as possible. So that is the task that is listed here above the Ancient One's name. So you can actually complete this task multiple times if you have sufficient dice. And each time that you complete this task, you actually remove one of the Doom tokens from the Doom track. Players are not allowed to focus or request assistance during the final battle, but they may still use all of their clues, items, spells, and allies that they might have remaining. In the event that the last Doom token is actually removed, then the players win. During the clock phase, the player still advances the clock by 3 hours as per usual. However, at this point, when midnight strikes, instead of drawing a Mythos card, you instead resolve the attack effect of the Ancient One. If a player is devoured during the final battle, then they do not get to draw a new investigator. However, they do have to still resolve a clock phase during their turn. They simply don't get to attack. So finally, we're going to go over monsters. So when a monster is drawn, it must be placed on a monster task if possible. With an empty task, like this one, you simply place the monster there, and it actually becomes a new task for that particular adventure. In some cases, tasks that are already printed in the task list will have the monster border around them. In that case, if a monster is placed there, they replace that task. On some cards, there are also partial tasks. So there will be a full task shown on the card, but only part of it will be bordered by the monster border. In that case, the monster is simply placed over that portion of the task, and that adds to the task. In the event that a monster is drawn and there are no open monster tasks, then the monster still must be added, but it can be added to any adventure or other world as you wish. It simply becomes the last task for that adventure or other world. And in this case, monsters must be added as evenly as possible, so you can't add another monster to an adventure if there are other ones that have none. In the event that the monster is placed on an ordered task, one where the tasks have to be completed in order, then the monster becomes the last task on that card. And in the event that a monster is actually appearing because of the reward from a card, which is kind of odd to say anyway, then the player may place the monster on the incoming adventure. Now, a monster task is pretty much like any other task, so you have to roll the dice and you have to match the icons on the task. Regardless, though, of the outcome of an adventure, any monsters that are defeated, so that where the task is complete, are actually gained as trophies. So on the back of the monster card will be a number of trophies that they are worth. Partial monster tasks must be completed fully to actually defeat the monster. So you couldn't, in this case, simply place a 2 investigation on the monster and defeat it. You still have to use the 1 investigation that is shown there. When a spell or other effect allows a player to instantly defeat a monster, he simply chooses a monster and flips it face down. That monster is then considered defeated and can be claimed at the end of the resolution phase. And if it's on a partial task, then the remaining icons must still be completed. So finally, how do you win Elder Sign? Well, the players win if they get enough Elder Signs to defeat the Ancient One before it awakens, or if they actually defeat the Ancient One in combat, which is not very likely. However, the players lose if all players are devoured.
So, now we get to actually play Elder Sign. Alright, so Jason is the first player, so we're going to give him all the dice, so that he is aware that he is the first player.
Alright, to start off with, I first have to take my movement phase. So first of all, I think I'm going to move to this adventure here, Blood on the Floor. So next we go to the resolution phase, so I actually have to try that adventure. So before I actually roll for the first time, I am actually going to use the axe, which allows me to add the yellow die to my dice pool. So now I'm going to make my first roll. Alright, so this is an ordered task, so I actually do have to complete the tasks in order. So the first task is a 2 investigation, and I have plenty of 3 investigations. So I'm going to be overdoing it here, but that doesn't really matter, because either way I'd be using 1 die. So since I was successful, I can just pick up the remaining dice and roll again. Alright, so the second task is a 3 investigation, and I happen to have rolled 1 on the green die. So I'll use that.
Cruising through this task pretty easily, Jay.
Yeah, we'll see how this last one goes.
Yeah, it's a little harder to do.
Alright.
Not so much.
So in this case, I need a terror and a peril. Anyway, I need a terror and a peril icon. Unfortunately, I did not get the peril. However, I did get a terror, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus that die. So I'm going to place it on my investigator marker. Next, I have to discard a die because I actually failed to roll. And I get to roll the 2 remaining dice.
Ooh.
Unfortunately, I still have not gotten that peril that I need.
Well, there is a peril on this die, so...
Yeah. So I'm going to discard another die, and I have to roll once more and hope to get a peril in 1 roll.
Nope.
Which I did not. Alright, so at this point I failed the adventure, so all of these dice are removed from it, including the one that is being focused, and I have to take the penalties. So I have to lose 1 sanity and 1 stamina.
Oh, that just reminded me. So when we actually did the initial setup, we forgot that our maximum sanities are supposed to be reduced because Cthulhu is the Great Old One.
Sanity and stamina.
Sanity and stamina, yeah. So, we're going to probably want to adjust that right now. Alright, there we go. So now we're back and adjusted again. So, sorry about the confusion, or any confusion that might have had there.
Alright, so next I have to do my clock phase. So the clock is advanced by 3 hours. It is not midnight, so now it's Ken's turn.
Okay, I think I'm going to try the administration office. So, the administration. I have to get either 1 scroll or 9 investigation in order to succeed this. So, all the dice are mine right now. I think I am going to use my revolver. That will give me a yellow die to my pool. Alright, let's go. Well, I didn't roll any investigation, like, at all, but I did get the scroll. So I will put that on. Hey Jason, I found your peril.
Yeah, well, too little too late.
Alright, gotta roll big. Finish this off. Wow, really not at all. Well, I could focus this too, I guess, but it's not really in my best interest because I could still roll a 3 on that.
Tough call there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to focus this because I could end up getting a max of 4, so I want to try to keep getting that 4 because that'll make or break this check for me. So I'm just going to discard one of the dice, and I'm not going to bother focusing any. It's amazing. I think you rolled all the 3s out of this. I don't think they have any 3s left.
What can I say? Just awesome at investigating, I guess.
Well, I really should have probably focused that too, I guess, because now I'm sort of in dire straits. I could still make this check, but if I don't make it on this one, then there's not possible for me to succeed, I don't think, so that's a 2, and 2 scrolls. Nope, that's it. Because the max I could actually get on the remaining dice is 7 now. So, that's it. I lose 1 sanity. So, advancing the clock. It's now 6 o'clock. Jason, you're up.
Alright, so I still think I'm going to stay where I am at Blood on the Floor. So I'm not actually going to move during my movement phase. And I am going to use the old journal, one of my other items, to get the yellow die again. So, alright, so again I complete the 2 investigation task rather readily. And roll again. Alright, so at this point, I can choose to still complete the task because I do have a total of 3. It will take up 2 dice, but then again, if I fail, I have to discard a die anyway, so...
Well, that's true, so...
Net result is the same, so I might as well. Unfortunately, that leaves me with only 3 dice to complete the last task. Now...
Odds are still kind of in your favor on this one, though.
Well, anyway, I do want to note, though, that if this was not an ordered task, I actually would have completed the final task, which is, you know, relatively more difficult, and I would have probably done that instead of the one that I had to do. But because it is ordered, I have to just re-roll those dice. Okay, so in this case, I got the peril instead of the terror, but this is very reminiscent of last time. So I am going to focus the peril. Now, at this point, I'm going to discard the yellow die, because the yellow die actually doesn't have a terror result on it. So at least this way I have a chance. And...
Ooh,
look at
there
that.
you go!
So I actually have completed this adventure. So first of all, I take the card over to my area. My investigator is returned to the entrance. All of the dice are removed here. We flip over another adventure. Alright. And finally I gain the rewards listed. So first of all, there is an elder sign in the rewards section. So we take 1 elder sign and place it below the Ancient One card to show that we have gained 1. There is also a common item. Now, Bob Jenkins' special ability says each time Bob gains 1 or more common items after setup, he gains 1 extra common item. So I actually get 2 instead of just the 1 listed.
And you also get a clue token.
Yes, I do. So now we move on to my clock face. So that advances by 3 hours. And now it's the end of my turn, so Ken.
Well, seeing as how I've been only rolling icons so far, let's see if I can do When Night Falls and see how that goes down. That's a pretty tough task without items as well, but, I mean, hey, might as well give it a shot. Alright. It's not an ordered task, so I can just roll at this and throw some icons down. Oh man, that's a lot of scrolls, but nothing else at all. Well, I rolled many scrolls, and I only need actually 2 of them to complete the task. But unfortunately I didn't get the peril that I required for it. So, I'm actually going to secure one of my dice on me, and I'm actually going to use my spell to secure the other. However, this also means that I'm down to 2 dice, and, well, odds are not in my favor on this, but let's see what I can do.
Hey, I pulled it out, so...
No, that's more scrolls, so with 1 die remaining, I can't actually finish the task. Well, that's it for me. I couldn't complete that task, and that was a pretty heavy penalty too, so down to 1 stamina, 2 sanity. Ending my turn, we go to the clock phase, and it is now struck midnight. This means, first off, we draw a new Mythos card. No immediate effect today, but the next time the clock strikes midnight, 2 monsters will appear. Luckily, this unlocks our die, which is good because we have been sort of really missing it.
Yes, we have. So now it's on to my turn again.
So, Elder Sign. Jason, what are you thinking?
Well, I must say I really like this game. It's kind of like Arkham Horror Light.
It very much is.
Yeah, and a lot of the issues with Arkham Horror are, you know, the huge setup time, the vast amount of time that you have to set aside to actually play it.
So bad.
Whereas a game of this can, you know, be played in under 2 hours, and it's very easy to set up and break down. The only issues that I actually had with this game are that, well, for one thing, there's just not any player interaction. So when you get to, you know, higher player games, then you're just kind of waiting around to see what happens when it rolls back around to your turn. Not to mention the fact that when you actually get to 8 players, there's 2 full rotations of the clock by the time it's back to your turn. So, you know, 2 midnight effects could have happened, and, you know, who knows what state things are going to be in by the time it's you again.
It really is one of those games where you can finish your turn, walk away, and then someone can yell at you, "Hey, it's your turn," and you wouldn't have missed anything because... sorry, I mean in like high player games, like 4+ player games, because the only thing you need to be present for is when there is someone who's in the same location as you, and they want to be able to use you to help them secure a die. In like an 8-player game, though, that doesn't happen nearly as often. Mostly just from the fact that, let's say that through all odds, like half the people who go to all their events succeed their events. That means that there's probably only going to be 2 events remaining since you started your turn last. That's the math, right? That's appropriate.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's only really going to be like 2 events remaining after all of those events have been dealt with and such. Again, assuming that half the players have dealt with them in an 8-player game. So it means when it comes back to you, odds are the only 2 events that you can still plan for, per se, if you can even call it planning at that point, are going to be probably 2 harder ones. They're going to be the ones that no one else wanted to do, right? So, I have a couple problems with this game. I should probably start by saying that I do actually really enjoy this, but it's not a game that I really like to play over and over. And this is for a couple reasons. One reason is because of the random chance factor. Now, I know in other... there's plenty of other games where you're relying on dice to do anything, and that's fine. That is a mechanic in games. You need a random arbiter sometimes. You can't just have, like, auto-win all the time. But I find that in this game, as opposed to other Arkham alumni-type games, in other Arkham games, you have a sense of progression with... You know, you'll pick up an item, and that'll help you, and then you start to kind of find your niche, and you sort of get into the role and the mode of something. Like, you have bonuses to certain types of checks. Someone always ends up being kind of like the combat monkey. One person is really good at, like, jumping into portals. I'm using, obviously, Arkham Horror as my example here. But In Elder Sign, that doesn't happen. When you have an item, you either use it and then finish the event, or you don't, and then the item is gone. And because of that, because there's no progression, it's really hard to kind of keep, I don't know. I find that the events get harder as time goes on. Obviously, they're completely random, but as time goes on, like, you're going to be taking your, like, so many hits and such. And in other Arkham-related games, I feel like you kind of get attached to your investigator. Your investigator is important to you. Like, you've been building him up, and it's important. And if he dies, if they get devoured, that's huge. You're like, oh no, I've lost my investigator. In this, it feels like it's just part of the mechanics. It's like, okay, well, as I even said in the example turns there, I'm almost dead, so, like, I'm not even going to bother healing. I'm just going to rush into an event and just hope for the best, and I'll just keep on going until I get devoured. Because at that point, it's better just to reset than to just continue on. Because that's just kind of how the game rolls. Yeah, so between items and random chance, those are my main issues with this game. It's the one... If there was some sort of sense of progression, where you could get items that had a remaining effect, where they just didn't disappear, like, where it's like, you had an item that every time it gives you 1 investigation. Like, your investigation is increased by, like, 1. I don't see that as game-breaking. You could also even have items that contribute icons, but, like, you can always have these contribute icons. One thing I was saying to Jason beforehand, the way allies work is they are always contributing a bonus to you. They're always conferring their little bonus of whatever it is. And under certain conditions, they are destroyed, or you can remove them to have a greater effect or another effect happen or whatever. If items worked in the same way, say if you had a sword, and the sword under certain conditions, like if used in a monster, like if used during a monster, the sword is then discarded, otherwise the sword remains. Or vice versa. If the sword was used for a monster, it would stay, but if it was used for something else, it would just go away. Like, I don't know, maybe you're using the sword to prop up the security office, whereas with the sword you're actually, like, attacking a monster with it and such. I guess, I don't know, I'm not really sure if there's really a way to directly fix this. It certainly isn't something you can really kind of home rule into there because of the way the game is set up. So, Jason, how would you rate Elder Sign?
Personally, I give it a 4 out of 5. Meeples. I do really enjoy it. There are some problems, but, you know, it's a nice, fun, quick game. How about you, Ken?
Before I give it a rating, I just want to make a statement. Jason's kind of rolling his eyes here. I just want to make a statement that I have in many videos and in many comments from you fine viewers mentioned that I regret the way I rate games because the very first episode that we ever did was Dungeon Quest. And I gave Dungeon Quest a 3.5. The problem here is that I feel like Dungeon Quest is sort of middle of the road for me. I don't really enjoy it that much, but I don't think it's a bad game. So I feel like that should have been a 2.5. But unfortunately, because of that, I was rating everything not in terms of how they should have been rated, and just took that as a loss, as just me, you know, us being new and not really having a real rating scheme or anything yet. So I just want to make a note that from now on, I'm just clear on the board. You can consider my other ratings and such, but from now on, like such, as I'm doing, I'm actually going to be ignoring all my previous ratings and I'm going to be starting from scratch. So that says 2.5 is middle of the road. Not a bad game, but not a great game. So just to keep that in mind. I'm going to give Arkham Horror... I'm going to give Elder Sign a 3.5. And because, from what Jason was saying, it has its flaws, but these aren't overcomeable. Sorry, these aren't insurmountable is what I meant. I'm going to go back. I'm going to give Elder Sign a 3.5 out of 5. And this is because I don't like games that rely too much on random chance. Some games, that's the point of the game, and some games do it really, really well. I just feel like with Elder Sign, the mechanic that they have of losing dice as checks are subsequently failed, I feel is really awesome, and I feel they did a really good job at that. But one of the problems I have, like I said, is that you rely too much on random chance, and there's no way to progress. As we were also saying, even though it's wicked that this is an 8-player game, because there really needs to be more high player games. Like, that's just something that's missing in gaming in general. I feel like it's one of those games where it is a cooperative game, but it doesn't really, interaction is very sparse. So 3.5 out of 5. So that is going to give us a grand total of 7.5 meeples.
So that's all we have for today. Join us next time for At the Gates of Loyang.
One of the Harvest trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
Close to my heart. See you next time. Until then, have good games.
Yeah.